My name is Ethan Harper. I live in Manhattan, and until about 6 months ago, I thought I had a perfectly ordinary marriage. Not exciting, not dramatic, just steady. I'm 37. I work in digital marketing, and I used to think that quiet stability was something to be proud of. My wife, Sarah, had been growing distant for a while. I blamed it on stress, on her new job, on the general grind of life. I didn't ask too many questions when she came home late or spent weekends working on herself. Yoga retreats, wellness events, girls' weekends, I supported it all. Honestly, I thought that was the right thing to do. But something felt off. You know that itch in your gut? The kind that tells you the floorboards are about to give, even if everything looks fine? It started one Sunday morning. Sarah left her phone in the kitchen while showering. It buzzed twice. I didn't mean to look, but the name caught my eye, Julian. I didn't recognize it. That wasn't one of her friends, at least not one she ever mentioned. The preview message? Last night was incredible. Still tasting you. I stared at it for a long time, as the air in the room thickened. Then I heard the shower stop. I put the phone back, exactly where it was. I didn't say anything. That moment was the first crack in the dam, but I wasn't ready to break it open. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Sarah, who drifted off like everything was normal, her breathing slow and steady, her back to me, as always. My eyes stared at the ceiling fan, its blades spinning lazily, mocking me with their rhythm. I kept thinking, maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe Julian is a joke, a friend, a misunderstanding. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or demand answers. Instead, I did what I've always done. I buried it. I told myself that people make mistakes, and marriages go through weird phases. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe I wasn't enough lately. It's easier to lie to yourself than to face the pain of betrayal. The next day, I tried to act normal. I made her coffee just the way she liked it. She kissed me on the cheek and thanked me, like nothing had changed. Like my world wasn't unraveling one polite smile at a time. But it did change me. I started noticing more. The way she'd take phone calls on the balcony, the way she smiled down at her screen and quickly locked it when I walked into the room. The new lingerie that hadn't been for me. The way she flinched slightly when I reached for her hand. I was unraveling, but quietly. I still told her I loved her. I still made dinner. I still played the good husband. But every little action of hers chipped away at something inside me I didn't yet know had a breaking point. And that point was closer than I thought. The thing about pretending everything is fine is that it changes you more than it fixes anything. I was walking through my own apartment like a guest. The kitchen smelled like her new herbal teas. The bedroom now had incense burning every night, since I didn't choose. The Spotify playlists were different. The photos of us were still on the walls, but I couldn't remember the last time we smiled like that for real. I kept thinking, who is Julian? And more than that, who is Sarah now? We used to be partners. We used to talk about everything, politics, dumb TV shows, our future kids, retirement plans. But those conversations had dried up, replaced by her vague answers and the flicker of guilt that sometimes passed through her eyes when I looked too long. One Friday night, she came home late. I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch a Knicks game I didn't care about. She walked in wearing a sleek black dress and heels I hadn't seen before. Lipstick smudged, cheeks flushed. Her hair was tousled in a way that didn't scream business dinner. "Oh, sorry," she said too casually. The client meeting ran long. Traffic was a nightmare. She didn't meet my eyes. I nodded. "You eat?" She paused. "Yeah." We grabbed sushi. That word stuck in my throat like glass. I wanted to say something. To yell. To scream that I wasn't blind. That I knew she was lying. That every part of her now reeked of someone else's touch. But the words died in my mouth. All I said was, "Okay." She showered and went to bed. I stayed on the couch until 3 a.m., staring into the blank television screen, watching my reflection. I looked old, tired, small. That was when I realized something that changed everything. Maybe I wasn't just watching my marriage fall apart. Maybe I was enabling it. I'd been waiting for her to stop, waiting for her to confess, waiting for her to remember that I mattered. But maybe I needed to stop waiting. There's a strange clarity that comes after a long period of numbness. Like when your foot falls asleep and the blood starts rushing back. It hurts, but at least you're feeling something again. That's what happened the next morning. I woke up on the couch, the imprint of the remote still on my cheek, and I realized I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending. I needed to know. Not just suspect. No, for myself. So I took a day off work. I told Sarah I had meetings downtown, even made a point to pack a laptop, and wear my usual button-up. She barely acknowledged it, already tapping away on her phone. Probably him. An hour later, she left in a rush, dressed a little too nicely for a supposed wellness seminar. I followed her. It felt like a movie cliché. Me in my car, 2 blocks behind, hands sweaty on the steering wheel, heart pounding louder than the traffic around me. I hated myself for doing it, but I hated the silence more. She met him at a small cafe on 6th Avenue. I parked across the street, pretending to be on my phone, eyes locked on the reflection in the window. Tall guy, clean-shaven, stylish, confident smile. Julian. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I didn't need to. She leaned in close, touched his wrist when she laughed, tilted her head in that soft way she used to do with me. He slid a hand over hers and didn't let go. I took a photo with my phone. Not to confront her. Not yet. I just needed proof, for me. Proof that I wasn't paranoid. That I wasn't imagining it. That the ache in my chest wasn't just fear or insecurity. It was real. My wife was with someone else, and I was standing across the street, invisible. I drove home without following them further. What more did I need? That night, Sarah came home humming. Literally humming. She kissed my cheek. How was your day? Quiet, I said. Yours? She smiled. Pretty peaceful. She didn't know I had already seen the truth in that window reflection. I slept beside her with a cold clarity that night. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to beg. No, I was going to take back my life, on my terms. After that day, something inside me shifted permanently. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask her about Julian. I didn't cry or scream or beg. But I also wasn't the same man anymore. Not to her, not to myself. I began playing a role. Not to manipulate, but to protect. I was done being blindsided. Done being the guy who believed in illusions just because they were more comfortable than the truth. First, I made copies of all important documents. Our mortgage papers, joint account details, insurance policies, everything. I scanned and stored them in a cloud drive she didn't know existed. Then I got a separate bank account, just in my name. Quietly, gradually, I diverted small amounts of my paycheck to it. Not enough to raise alarms, but enough that within a few weeks, I had a modest cushion, just in case. I started therapy, online, once a week, with a guy named Dr. Ramirez. At first, I didn't say much, but slowly, the dam broke. I told him everything, from the early distance to the text from Julian to the cafe on 6th Avenue. He didn't judge me. He didn't rush me. He said something that stuck. You don't need to burn her life down to heal. You just need to stop letting her hold the match. That line replayed in my mind constantly. I stopped doing little things for her. No more back rubs. No more cooking her favorite meals. No more picking up her dry cleaning. She noticed. She asked once or twice if I was okay. I said I was just tired. She didn't press. That told me everything. She was too deep in her new world to worry about the one she was destroying. I started staying out late, just to see if she'd care. Gym, bookstores, solo walks in Central Park. When I got home, she barely looked up from her phone. Good. Let her believe I was drifting. Let her believe I was too passive to do anything. She had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead. And the time was coming when I'd take the first real step forward. It was a Tuesday when the mask started to slip, for both of us. Sarah came home from work a little too cheerful. Her cheeks were flushed, and there was a bounce in her step I hadn't seen in years. The moment she walked through the door, I knew she had been with him. She tossed her purse on the counter and gave me a breezy, "Hey babe," like we were still 25 and in love. I nodded. Hey. I was sitting at the table, reading. A prop, really. My focus was on her every movement, how her fingers tapped her phone, the slight smirk on her lips, the way she looked everywhere but at me. Then she said it. I've been thinking, she began, grabbing a sparkling water from the fridge. Maybe we should take some time apart. There it was. The moment I'd been anticipating, dreading, and preparing for all at once. I set my book down slowly. Oh, and why is that? She shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. I just feel like we've been distant. Like we're growing in different directions. I don't want either of us to be unhappy. I tilted my head. So, you've already found your happiness then? That caught her off guard. Her smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? I kept my tone calm. Julian, right? That's the direction you're growing in. Her face went pale. The silence between us roared louder than any scream could have. How? How long have you known? She finally whispered. Long enough, I said. Long enough to know this marriage ended long before you admitted it. She sat down across from me, hands trembling slightly. Ethan, I didn't want to hurt you. But you did. I didn't plan for this to happen. She paused, searching for sympathy. I needed to feel alive again. Things between us were so quiet. I felt invisible. That stung, but I didn't let it show. I nodded slowly, then stood up. You made your choice, Sarah. You've been making it for months. But now, I'm going to make mine. She looked up, confused. What does that mean? It means the next chapter doesn't include you. And I walked out of the kitchen, leaving her to sit in the silence she created. That night, I didn't cry. I slept on the couch, not because she asked, but because I chose to. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control. The next morning, I woke up early. Sarah was still asleep, curled up on her side of the bed like none of the previous night had happened. Maybe she thought we'd just move past it, sweep it under the rug like dust from an old fight. But I was done pretending. I brewed coffee, got dressed, and called a lawyer. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want drama. I wanted peace, closure, and most of all, freedom. By noon, I had a consultation scheduled with a firm downtown that specialized in divorce and asset protection. I also spoke to a real estate agent. My name was on the mortgage, but so was hers. I needed to know my options. I was methodical, cold, even, but I wasn't acting out of spite. I was acting out of resolve. When Sarah finally woke up around 10 a.m., she shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes like we were still the same people who used to laugh over pancakes on Sundays. Morning, she said quietly. I didn't respond. She looked at me, really looked, for the first time in weeks. Her voice softened. We should talk. We did. I replied without turning. She sighed. So that's it. You're just done. I finally met her gaze. You've been done for a while, Sarah. You just didn't say it out loud. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they didn't move me the way they once would have. I had mourned our marriage alone, quietly, in the dead of night. Her tears now were just late arrivals to a funeral I had already attended. Later that evening, I emailed her a list of joint accounts, assets, and a note. We'll handle this like adults. No drama, no fighting, just closure. She didn't reply, but I knew she read it. I watched her retreat to the bedroom and close the door. I didn't follow. I was done chasing a ghost of who she used to be. The hardest part wasn't letting go of her. It was letting go of who I was with her. The version of myself that tolerated less than he deserved, that bent and bent hoping she'd notice before he broke. That man was gone now. The days that followed were strangely quiet. Sarah moved around the apartment like a ghost, present, but untouchable. We coexisted under the same roof, saying as little as possible. The air between us was heavy, filled with unspoken truths and the weight of endings. She didn't mention Julian again. Maybe she was ashamed. Maybe she didn't care. Or maybe, just maybe, she realized that this time, she'd gone too far. I wasn't interested in digging through the rubble of our past. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. I focused on building a new foundation under my own feet. I finalized the paperwork with the lawyer, opened a new health insurance policy, and started looking at apartments closer to the park. There was one moment that almost broke me, though. I came home one evening after work. She was sitting on the couch, flipping through our old photo albums, the kind we'd only ever taken out during anniversaries. She didn't notice me at first, her fingers brushing across a picture of us on our honeymoon in Santorini. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red. We were happy, she said, voice hoarse. Weren't we? I didn't answer right away. I sat across from her and studied the photo she held. We were, I said, but we stopped choosing each other. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. I didn't think it would hurt like this. That was the closest she ever came to apologizing. And in that moment, I didn't feel hatred. Just sorrow, for what we lost, for what we wasted, for how two people can start as soulmates and end as strangers. I stood up and said, you should start looking for a new place. I'll move out if it's easier, but I'd rather one of us leave soon. She didn't argue. There were no more tears that night. No more words. Just the quiet unraveling of a marriage too long held together by silence. But beneath that silence, something else had started to grow. Me. A week later, I found a one-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side. Small, quiet, with a view of the river. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. No memories soaked into the walls. No ghosts hiding behind closet doors. Just blank space. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like freedom. I packed in silence. Sarah stayed out of my way. She offered once to help, but I declined. The finality of folding my clothes into boxes, labeling books I'd once read to her, and carrying out my life in cardboard was strangely peaceful, like laying something to rest. I moved out on a rainy Thursday. No dramatic goodbye. No tearful farewell. She didn't even walk me to the door. Just a quiet, "Take care, Ethan." I nodded. "You too." And that was it. The elevator ride down was long. My bag sat around me like lifeboats. When the doors opened and I stepped onto the wet sidewalk, I felt like I had crossed some invisible threshold, not just between homes, but between lives. The first few nights in my new place were hard. The silence was louder than I expected. There were no footsteps in the hallway, no hairbrush on the sink, no passive-aggressive questions about my day. But there was also no pretending, no walking on eggshells, no lingering scent of someone else's cologne. Just me. I started rediscovering things I'd forgotten I loved. Long walks without a destination, reading without glancing at the clock, cooking without catering to someone else's taste, sleeping diagonally across the bed. Small things. Mundane, maybe, but deeply mine. Dr. Ramirez, my therapist, asked me during a session, "What do you miss about Sarah?" I thought for a long time. Then I said, "The idea of her, not the reality." He smiled. That was when I realized I wasn't healing from losing her. I was healing from losing myself in a marriage that had long stopped nurturing either of us. Freedom isn't loud. Sometimes it's just sitting alone in your own apartment, sipping tea, and not feeling like you owe the world an apology for being at peace. About 3 weeks after I moved out, I got a text from Sarah. "Do you have time to talk?" I stared at it for a while. My initial instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity, or closure, got the better of me. So I replied, "Tomorrow, 6 p.m., call me." The next evening, right on time, my phone buzzed. Her voice was soft. "Hey." I leaned back on my couch, looking out the window at the orange-pink sky. "Hey, I wanted to say I'm sorry," she began. "For everything." I didn't say anything. "I don't expect forgiveness," she added quickly, "but I thought you deserved to hear it from me. I was selfish. I blamed you for my own dissatisfaction, and I made choices that broke what we had." I let the silence stretch. "I think I was afraid," she continued. "Afraid of feeling stuck. Afraid of losing myself. And instead of talking to you, I just escaped. With someone who made me feel seen. It was a lie, and I know that now." I exhaled slowly. "Why tell me this now?" "Because I still care," she whispered. "Not in a romantic way. I know that ship has sailed. But you were good to me, Ethan. Better than I deserved." That landed harder than I expected. There was a part of me, deep down, that had longed for this. An acknowledgement. A moment of truth. But instead of filling me with relief or satisfaction, it just made me feel sad. I told her the truth. "I appreciate the apology. I do. But I've moved on. I'm not angry anymore, Sarah. I just don't have space in my life for the past. I hope you find what you're looking for, truly." She sniffled. "I hope you find peace." "I already did," I said. When the call ended, I felt lighter. Not because she had apologized, but because I didn't need it to heal. I had already done the work. Her words were a footnote, not the final chapter. And that was the moment I knew. I was finally free. After the call with Sarah, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was stillness. For the first time in years, the noise in my mind had quieted. I was no longer chasing answers. I had them. I was no longer aching for closure. I had found it, not in her words, but in my own growth. I didn't need to prove anything. I didn't need her to see my worth. I saw it myself now. The next few weeks were filled with small, beautiful discoveries. I took walks without looking at the time. I started sketching again, a hobby I'd long abandoned during the chaos of our crumbling marriage. I met new people, but not to fill the silence, just to share space with voices that didn't weigh me down. One Sunday morning, I sat in a tiny cafe reading a book when a stranger asked if the seat across from me was taken. Her name was Ava. She had a kind smile and an easy laugh. We talked for an hour about everything and nothing. Childhood memories, favorite smells, books we loved. I wasn't looking for anything, but it felt easy, natural. After she left, I didn't rush to romanticize it. I didn't start imagining a future or replaying our conversation in desperate loops. Instead, I just smiled and thought, I'm still capable of connection. That was enough. I also started repairing old friendships. People I had unintentionally pushed away during my marriage. Friends who had gently voiced concern when they saw me shrinking. I reached out. Some responded with open arms, others with caution. I didn't blame them. I had disappeared into someone else's life for too long. One friend, Marcus, said something over a drink that stayed with me. "I'm glad you're back, man. You used to light up rooms. Then one day you just dimmed." I didn't know how to help. I nodded. I didn't either. Every day, I lived with more intention. I didn't rush my healing. I let the scars breathe. I forgave myself for the years I spent silent, for not standing up for myself sooner, for believing love meant endurance at the expense of self-worth. Because I knew now, love starts with choosing yourself first. One quiet evening, about 2 months into my new life, I found myself sitting at my desk with a pen in hand and a blank page in front of me. No distractions, no music, no wine, just silence and that ever-present urge to release what was still tangled up inside. So, I began writing a letter. Not to send, not to share, just to let go. Dear Sarah, you once told me I was too quiet, that I never pushed back, never fought for anything. But I was fighting every day. You just didn't see it. I fought to believe in us. I fought to keep the peace. I fought the sinking feeling in my chest every time your phone lit up with a name you never explained. I fought for you, until I realized I should have been fighting for me. There were nights I laid awake, wondering what I lacked, what you needed that I couldn't give. I compared myself to a man I'd never met and tortured myself with 100 invisible failures. But now I understand. It wasn't about Julian. It wasn't about the silence. It was about the quiet death of mutual effort, something we both stopped feeding. You drifted away, and I stood still, hoping my stillness would anchor you. Instead, it drowned me. But I'm not bitter anymore. I don't hate you. I don't even blame you. We were two people too afraid to admit we'd grown in opposite directions. I found peace in the absence of pretending. I found strength in solitude. And I found myself again, in the spaces where you used to be. I hope, wherever life takes you, that you stop running from your own reflection. We both deserve better versions of ourselves. Ethan. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer I rarely opened. Writing it wasn't about her. It was about me. About choosing to release the weight I had carried for so long. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need justice. I needed release. And in that letter, I gave myself exactly that. One Saturday morning, months after moving out, I caught myself humming in the shower. It wasn't a big moment. No flash of divine insight. No dramatic montage playing behind me. Just steam on the mirror, warm water running down my back, and a tune in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. It stopped me, because for the first time in a long time, I was happy. Not the kind of happiness that demands attention or validation, just a quiet, rooted joy. A sense of being exactly where I was meant to be. I stepped out, wiped the mirror, and looked at myself. Really looked. My eyes were clearer. My face had lost that hollowed, tired look I'd worn like armor during the last stretch of my marriage. My posture had changed too. I stood taller, more present. I smiled, and it wasn't forced. That day, I took myself out, not to distract or numb or fill the silence, but to celebrate. I went to the farmer's market. I bought fresh basil because it reminded me of summer. I grabbed a book from a local shop I'd passed 100 times, but never entered. I ate lunch outside and didn't check my phone once. It was the most ordinary day, and that's what made it extraordinary. Later that evening, I got a message from Ava, the woman from the cafe. Just a simple, "Hey, feel like grabbing a coffee this week?" I looked at the message and smiled again. Not because it meant anything definite. Not because I was searching for romance. But because I knew that now, I could walk into something new without dragging the past behind me like chains. This wasn't about starting over. It was about starting right. With intention. With honesty. With me. A few days later, I met Ava again. We sat on a bench near the river with coffee in hand, the city humming softly behind us. She told me about her recent trip to the Catskills, how she hiked alone for the first time and felt like she reclaimed something. I listened, not because I was trying to impress her, but because her words resonated. It wasn't about romance. It was about presence. Two people sharing a moment, not filling a void. Afterward, I walked home through the city, past the parks, past the couples, past the buildings that once felt like walls. Everything looked familiar, but it all felt new. When I got home, I opened the drawer where Sarah's unsent letter still rested. I read it one last time. Then I tore it in half. Not out of anger. Out of completion. I no longer needed to hold on to the weight of old words. I didn't need her to carry the burden of my pain, and I didn't need to carry hers anymore either. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the skyline fade into darkness, and I felt something deeper than happiness, peace. The truth is, I'll always carry the scars. But scars aren't shameful. They're reminders that you healed. The moral of my story? It's this. You can survive heartbreak without becoming hard. You can walk away without becoming bitter. You can lose someone and still find yourself. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't winning someone back. It's learning that you never needed them to be whole in the first place. I didn't get the ending I once begged for. I got something better. A new beginning I chose for myself. Ethan Harper, former husband, quiet fighter, free man. If this story moved you, drop a like to support the channel. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, real-life stories every week.